A couple of days ago, fellow YouTuber Shintai tweeted that of all the fanbases out there, the Tales fanbase is the most divided. I thought about it for a little while and there does seem to be a lot of differing opinions among fans. Then I remembered that a little while ago I made a top 5 Tales video and encouraged all of you to share your top 5 Tales games. That video now has over 500 comments. I compiled all your answers, I've got the numbers, so just how divided is the Tales fanbase? Alright, so of course not all 500 comments were participating in making a top 5 Tales list. There were lots of replies and threads just discussing the games in general. Some people hadn't played 5 Tales games and some people included unlocalized Japanese only titles in their list. I've intentionally excluded any Japanese only releases from the stats because I just don't think it would be a particularly fair stat to share. My channel is obviously geared towards an English speaking audience and there were so few mentions of them it wouldn't really be insightful in any way. The stats I've got are how many times each game appeared in somebody's top 5 list, and I've also got the number of times each game appeared in the number 1 spot on your list. Based on the amount of times each game appeared on a list, here is the top 5 overall. Symphonia made it onto your lists 184 times, followed by Vesperia at 169 and very closely followed by Abyss at 168. Exilia was next with 158 and very close to that was Berseria with 156. I'll pop all the appearance stats up on screen now, arranged in order from most occurrences to least. Now the two games I often see getting a lot of hate surprisingly were not that far behind. Graces and Graces F appeared on your list 120 times and Zestiria showed up 110 times. After that we really dropped down in popularity. The next highest occurring was Fantasia with 50. Fantasia was also the most popular of the more retro titles in the series, but not by much as Destiny showed up 48 times and Eternia 45 times. I think the far more interesting stat here though is how many times each game claimed the number 1 spot on your lists. Symphonia was the top dog in appearances, having shown up 184 times, but only 35 of you ranked it number 1. That works out to be roughly 19% of people who put Symphonia on their top 5 lists put it in the number 1 spot. Vesperia was the winner here, both in terms of overall appearances at number 1 with 40 and percentages with 23.67%. The only game that didn't get a number 1 spot at all was Tales of Hearts or Hearts R. It only showed up 20 times and never at number 1. The most interesting stat to me is that of Zestiria. It was on 110 of your lists, but it only claimed number 1 on 6 of them. This was the worst percentage overall at just 5.45%. Another interesting stat is Exilia 2. It had the third best percentage overall at 19.15%. It only showed up 47 times overall, but 9 of those times it was in number 1. All the stats are on screen now. This time they're arranged by the number of times you put them in first on your lists. Berseria was another game that didn't fare too well in this regard. It was only in the number 1 spot 15 times from 156 total appearances. Most of the less popular titles did pretty well in percentages. They have fewer fans overall, but the fans they do have regard them highly. So going back to the question from the intro, just how divided is the Tales fanbase? There certainly seems to be a huge range of opinions. There really wasn't any absolute standout from the top 5 stats. Vesperia, Abyss and Symphonia are all very nearly as well regarded as one another, and depending on which stats you look at, there are plenty of other titles hot on their heels. I was surprised by how many fans there are of Graces and Zestiria considering the hate you usually see for them. Zestiria did have very few number 1 appearances though, which seems to confirm that its missteps largely affected everyone, ruining the game for some and tainting it just enough to fall out of favourite contention for others. What conclusions do you draw from these stats though? I'm interested to see what everyone thinks in the comments. And just before we end, I've set up 2 straw polls which I'll put in a pinned comment down below. They are very simple. One is for picking which Tales game you think is the best in the series, and the other is the one you think is the worst. Unlocalized and spin-off titles are not included. Thanks for liking, subscribing and sharing, and I'll see you all soon.